No one in Los Angeles went to sleep on the night of June 5, 1968, believing they were witnessing the end of an era. The city was alive with optimism. The air itself seemed charged with possibility. Inside the grand ballroom of the Ambassador Hotel, a massive crowd had gathered to celebrate what they believed was the beginning of a new chapter in American history. Robert F. Kennedy had just won the California Democratic primary, a crucial, hard-fought victory in his campaign for the presidency. For his supporters, this was more than just a political win. It was a moment of profound relief after years of turmoil, violence, and division that had defined the 1960s. The country was fractured, and Robert Kennedy, or Bobby as he was often called, was not just another candidate. To millions of people who felt unheard and left behind, he represented hope. He spoke with a raw honesty about poverty, racial injustice, and the growing, bloody unrest caused by the Vietnam War. To many Americans, especially the young, he symbolized healing. He was a chance to pull the country back from the edge of a precipice. As the night progressed, the ballroom buzzed with an electric excitement. Cheers erupted like thunder as Kennedy took the stage to deliver his victory speech. His words weren't just about winning, they were about unity. He urged Americans to move forward together to bridge the deep political and social wounds that had torn the nation apart. It wasn't a speech of triumph alone, but one of reconciliation and shared purpose. When he finished, the applause was deafening. He stepped away from the podium, making a fateful decision. He intended to walk through a kitchen corridor, a shortcut to greet more supporters and exit the building. But unseen by most in that celebratory crowd was a 24-year-old man named Sirhan Sirhan. A Palestinian immigrant, Sirhan had grown increasingly consumed by a bitter anger and resentment. He was deeply disturbed by Kennedy's public support for Israel following the Six-Day War in 1967. What had started as political frustration had spiraled into a dangerous obsession. Sirhan waited in the shadows of the hotel kitchen, blending into the narrow, crowded space where staff and supporters moved freely. Concealed in his hand was a .22 caliber revolver. His thoughts, later revealed in his own writings and court testimony, showed a man detached from reality, fueled by rage and a rigid ideological fixation. As Robert Kennedy entered the kitchen area, he was smiling, reaching out to shake hands with kitchen staff and acknowledge those who had waited patiently to see him. In that single instant, the atmosphere shifted from celebration to horror. The sharp crack of gunfire shattered the air. Witnesses later described a sudden burst of pure chaos. The pops echoed off the tiled walls, and screams erupted as people scattered in confusion and terror. Kennedy was struck multiple times. He collapsed to the cold, concrete floor. In the pandemonium, 5 other people were also wounded, innocent bystanders caught in the violent eruption of a single, terrible moment. Security and aides rushed toward Kennedy as panic ripped through the hotel. The man who had, only moments earlier, spoken of unity and hope now lay gravely injured, his life slipping away amid shouting, confusion, and utter disbelief. Emergency medical personnel arrived quickly, rushing Kennedy to Good Samaritan Hospital. Across the nation, the news began to spread like a shockwave. Radios interrupted their programming. Television broadcasts cut to breaking updates. America, a nation already on edge, held its breath. Despite hours of emergency surgery and desperate medical intervention, Robert F. Kennedy died in the early hours of June 6, 1968. He was 42 years old. The shock was immediate and overwhelming. It felt like a nightmare repeating itself. Only 5 years earlier, the nation had mourned the assassination of his brother, President John F. Kennedy. Now, history had delivered another devastating blow. Grief quickly turned into anger, and that anger curdled into a deep, national despair. Sirhan Sirhan was apprehended at the scene, wrestled to the ground, and disarmed by several men, including an Olympic athlete and a famous writer. In later interviews and during his trial, Sirhan bizarrely claimed to have no clear memory of the shooting. He described blackouts, confusion, and an inability to recall pulling the trigger. The trial that followed exposed a deeply troubled individual. Psychological evaluations painted a picture of a man suffering from severe emotional instability, political disillusionment, and distorted, fanatical beliefs. Sirhan was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, a sentence that was later commuted to life in prison when California temporarily abolished the death penalty. Yet, even with a conviction, questions lingered, and they still do today. Was Sirhan truly acting alone? Were there unforgivable failures in security that night? Did other political forces, whether domestic or foreign, play a larger, hidden role? Conspiracy theories flourished almost immediately, fueled by inconsistencies in witness accounts and disputed forensic evidence. For many Americans, the assassination deepened a growing distrust of institutions, of government, and of the media. The official story felt too simple for such a monumental tragedy. The impact of Robert Kennedy's death extended far beyond one man or one election. The nation erupted in a fresh wave of grief. Protests against the war and for civil rights intensified. Riots broke out in several cities. The youth movements advocating for peace and reform grew louder, more determined, but also more desperate. The late 1960s became defined not just by the fight for change, but by an unbearable sense of loss. It's crucial to remember the context. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated just 2 months earlier, in April of that same year. Political violence now felt like a constant, terrifying threat rather than an unthinkable tragedy. With Kennedy gone, many felt that the last real bridge to reconciliation had collapsed. The promise of a gentler, more compassionate future seemed to fade, replaced by a growing cynicism and fear. America emerged from that decade transformed, but also deeply scarred. The assassination marked a definitive turning point. It was a moment when the boundless optimism of the early 60s finally gave way to suspicion and paranoia. It was when the belief in steady progress was shaken to its core by repeated, senseless acts of violence. The country was no longer simply wrestling with policy disagreements. It was confronting the very fragility of democracy itself. Robert F. Kennedy's legacy became one of unrealized potential. A vision of a more just and peaceful America interrupted. A future that was imagined but never lived. Decades later, the echoes of that night in the Ambassador Hotel still linger. The questions remain. The grief, for those who lived through it, remains. And the lesson remains painfully clear. Hope, no matter how powerful, is fragile. History does not always announce its turning points in advance. Sometimes they arrive in moments of celebration and leave behind nothing but silence. Thanks for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more explorations into the moments that shaped our world.